the problem with saying those things now, and this never used to be the problem, but the problem with saying that you're pro something now, it is automatically taken by people to mean that you're anti something else, right? So that's why people can't say it anymore, and that's unfortunate. Business owner, educator, and lifelong observer of politics and economics, making sense of complex issues. And that's where, even though I am totally woke, or I'm in the process, as we all are, becoming more woke, and I'm pro-immigration and pro-DEI and all those things that a lot of people don't like. But I will complain about the fact that both on the left and right, as soon as you say you're pro something else, it automatically means you're anti something else. So if I say I'm pro-Israel, that's going to get me in trouble. And it shouldn't, because I am pro any country in the world that has been set up and is legitimate. It doesn't mean I agree with everything it does. So, therein lies the problem. We can't say, if I say I'm pro-Israel, then I'm also saying I'm pro-IDF. And is that how I feel? No. So if I say I'm pro-US, well, that to me is not as much as a inflammatory statement or something that's controversial, but it could be interpreted to mean that I support military bases all over the world and intervention in other countries' politics. So it's complicated. Let me just see if that was my daughter. My daughter's away. No, it was Starbucks. So let's get on with it. Simone, my cousin is stuck in Chicago because of this airline government shutdown stuff. Yeah. So let's just briefly talk about the shutdown. It's not something I'm really following and really have much interest in, because as I've explained here, it's a total case of shooting yourself in the foot, because the whole reason for the shutdown is because of the budget, right? And the budget can be fixed so that doesn't happen anymore. But neither side wants to fix it because they want to keep this weapon to use. And now the Republicans hate it because the Democrats are using it. And then when the Democrats are in power, they hate it because the Republicans use it. So they're all children, basically. They're all children complaining about something that they both love and complaining about something they can both get rid of, and they choose not to. So as I've said, in other countries that have parliamentary democracies, this would bring down the government and then there'd be an election, right? And that doesn't happen, unfortunately for you. That doesn't happen. So yeah, it is. Yeah, I know Simone, I know what it's because, but it's actually not because of that. So this is the government, this is the budget the government's proposing. And if the budget's not accepted, then that collapses the government. Well, the budget's not accepted, yet the government continues. So, what are the Democrats supposed to do in this situation? They want concessions. The Republicans don't want to give them concessions. So you are Australian. This is your. Are there not issues in Australia? No. Australia is perfect. We actually fixed everything in 1975, and nothing has gone wrong since then. No, I'm an Australian in Japan, and I'm just talking about stuff generally. So that's why I don't go into real specific stuff, because I don't understand it. So, Simone, I'm not saying I don't agree with the Democrats. What I'm saying is the system is set up so that both sides can use this to get concessions. And in this case, nobody wants to give concessions. So, they're as bad as each other. And you know where I stand on universal healthcare. I mean, I've never lived in a country that didn't have universal healthcare. Oh, except when I was a baby. Not a baby, a toddler. And I couldn't go to the doctor when I was sick because we couldn't afford it. You don't have to convince me that your healthcare system, you don't need to convince any foreigners, really. We all, there's a few things that we look at the US and we don't get. And healthcare is one of them. It's just something we don't understand. When the rest of the world moved towards this, I mean, Australia did it in around 1975. It might have been earlier. I think it was earlier. But around 1975 is when it was, sort of fully effective. And other countries have had it for just as long, and none of them, as you've heard me say a million times, not a single country that ever introduced universal healthcare became a socialist country. Not one. And not all socialist countries have universal healthcare. So it's actually not even tied to that, which is the only argument I ever hear from the US, is that we can't have universal healthcare because it will be a slippery slope to socialism. It's like, well, it's not. And slippery slope, again, is also a myth for most things. So I wanted to briefly talk about something I saw on TikTok, which was a further example to me of how many bots and trolls and fake accounts there are on all social media. I didn't realize, and I've noticed it more in my comments now, how many fake accounts there are for whatever purpose. And this one I saw it was just a photo, but it was a collage of photos of Mamdani. And I realized it was fake because all the photos they used were positive, yet the message was negative. So the photos all looked really good of him. He looked great. But the message was not word for word, but very close to this. The message was Zora Mamdani's swearing in cancelled due to him refusing to swear an oath on the Constitution. Now, the language is really important in this. And there are other things that are completely wrong with that, but the language is the most important thing. He refused to swear an oath on the Constitution. Think about those words for a moment. We'll come back to it. But first of all, how do we know that this is fake? Because it's November. He's not going to be mayor until January. There's no transfer of power right now from the present mayor to him. That doesn't happen till January. The election was a few days ago. So we know from there that this event couldn't possibly have happened, that he refused anything. And then let's get to the language. Swear an oath on the Constitution. That doesn't make any sense. That grammatically, that sentence doesn't make any sense. Right? You swear an oath to the Constitution in your Pledge of Allegiance and things like that. But you don't swear an oath on the Constitution. So the imagery is that he's got his hand on the Constitution and he's swearing an oath, and he refused to do that. That's not how that works, is it? Right? If it's a Christian, it's a Bible. If it's some other religion, it's whatever their holy book is. It's usually a holy book. It's not a copy of the Constitution. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because it's just it blew my mind when I had to read it a couple of times over to think, okay, I know this is fake because there can't be any swearing in right now because the election was just a few days ago. But he refused the oath on the Constitution. It just sounds so bizarre. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but there were thousands and thousands and thousands of likes on one comment. And there were hundreds of thousands of comments. It was crazy. This video, or this one thing, it must have been seen by everybody, and people were falling for it. And I realized then how much of the engagement on TikTok is fake. How much of it is really clickbait, rage bait, engagement bait, and really playing on people's fears and and also people's extreme views as well. People are so ready to condemn him before he even starts his job. And I actually put a video out saying, using Australia as an example, Kaya, if you're still here, that when Australia had their one and only socialist prime minister, and we've had left-leaning prime ministers, but our one and only true socialist prime minister, Australia didn't become a socialist country. And why is that? Were we lucky? No, it's because we have checks and balances that stop that sort of thing happening, because we are a capitalist-based economy and a fully fledged democracy. One guy getting in isn't going to turn the country into something else. That will never happen. It will happen in other countries. It can happen, and it's more likely to happen in other countries, but it certainly won't happen and hasn't ever happened in the OECD. So for all the people going nuts about Mamdani, and for the people that are super excited, calm down. Well, I did say this last November too, didn't I, about Trump? So, but he's a mayor. He's a mayor. Calm down. Everything will be okay. Simone says, I bet you guys have affordable university and college too. Yeah, it was free when I went. And in my second year, they introduced fees. And I think my first year of university would cost me about $2,000. Where does wealth go? In some videos that I was watching. And it's like, well, it's pretty easy. Where does wealth go? It goes into the stock market. And that's where it is. It's all, it all trickles up and goes into all this money that's created, goes into, goes to corporations, and they buy their shares back. And that never used to be that bad. Like it always used to be, it just never used to be that bad. And that's why I always talk about, and I say this to the EA all the time, it's not just the Federal Reserve that's the root of all the problems. Yes, there are problems with the Federal Reserve, but there are problems with everything. And they all need to be amended. And they all need to have the guardrails put back on, which is, pretty easy to do if someone was willing to do it. But they're not willing to do it because, if you want to look at this administration, and I'm only singling it out because it is the administration now, but previous administrations as well, all do quid pro quo stuff for their mates. It's pretty universal. This particular administration is very open about it and is really actually getting a lot of negative reports coming out about it. I think the index of there are so many indexes, but let me see if I can remember the index of what is it? Oh, okay, I can't remember. Okay, so anyway, one of the indexes has lowered the US from like 85 to 65 or something in terms of corruption. And that's because it can be clearly seen that when a donation, like a massive donation, goes to a super PAC or some other administration-related funding, within days, there's a favorable result for that person or corporation. So it's pretty clear cut that they're paying for stuff, and that's always been. It's just peak right now. I've noticed a lot of comments that I get, especially the comments that really attack me personally, and it's like, oh, that hurt. And then I look at it and I analyze the comment. It's like, hold on, this person didn't actually say anything about the topic of the video. And then when I comment back to them, I get no reply. Oh, that's a bot. That's just a cut and paste comment that they've sent to thousands of creators. Yeah, it's amazing, and they're really jumping out at me more now. I'm really noticing it. It's the comments that don't engage with the subject, that are very vague, and basically try to attack your intellect or something like that. So yeah, I'm feeling more confident. China Marino's here. Hello. That's all right. Yeah, so Simone, I don't know. It's something I'm going to look into, actually. I have heard all about these farms, and I have seen videos of, to be honest, the only one I've seen was in China, but I'm sure they're everywhere, where they have thousands of phones, hundreds of phones plugged in, and they're creating engagement. The most cynical conspiracy I heard was that one of the reasons why the TikTok algorithm is so good is that it's actually run by humans in the background. That yes, the tech is amazing and it is special, but one of the things that's going on in China is that there are all these people employed to engage. And they're just setting up all these phones, and they're using AI, and they're using translation, and they're using set scripts to just create momentum. Like that Mamdani one is a classic one. He refused to be sworn in because he wasn't sworn in because he refused to swear an oath on the Constitution. None of that makes literal sense at all. I'm just noticed I'm looking a little bit off. There we go. Yeah, so I don't know how they work. I don't know who's running them, and but it could be Russia. It could be Russia. Do I like Mamdani? I don't know him, but one of my core beliefs is that in a capitalist economy, socialist leaders are good for the economy. So statistically, and I have looked into this, and I keep telling people this, but I have looked into this. Statistically, since post-World War II, not cynically, if you want to be super fair, there's no difference between left and right administrations in the economy. The results that they get, there's no difference. So the general belief in my country is that what we call the Liberal Party is the party of business, and the Labour Party is the party of workers. And then when you look at the statistics of the post-war era, they come out fairly even. in your country, it would be Republicans are the party of business and Democrats the party of, workers and society, social values and things like that. And if you look at it, it can actually come out in favor of the left. And one of the reasons for that is that trickle down doesn't work. Like the trickle down economics doesn't work. And when a Labour leader or a left-leaning leader comes in, they tend to support policies that involve getting more money to the lower end of the economy, and those people spend it, and that is good for the economy. Rather than, in a nutshell, rather than giving tax cuts to the wealthy, you give tax cuts to the poor because they spend it all. The other side's argument is if you give tax cuts to the wealthy, they invest it. Well, the reality is, no, they don't. They don't. And if you don't give them tax cuts and they have money to invest anyway, which they do, they will invest it if it means they're going to make more money. So you don't need to give them tax cuts to incentivize them more, or, they can use their money better. No, they can't. The best people to give money to are the lower end because they spend it all and it actually trickles up that way. So that's where I stand on Mamdani. I don't know him. I don't know what he's going to do, but my general belief is that a left-leaning leader is better in a democracy that is capitalist. So Remembrance Day for you guys is different for the Commonwealth, Australia, New Zealand, UK, etc., and Europe and other countries. And it's interesting. I don't know if you guys know this, but the difference is our Remembrance Day is what Woodrow Wilson called Armistice Day. And it was to commemorate that on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the armistice was agreed to and World War I ended. And so in 1919, Woodrow Wilson said, let's have Armistice Day, and King George V said, yeah, that's cool, but we're going to call it Remembrance Day. And then what it was then for both the US and Europe was a solemn occasion to remember those that had fallen, mostly at that time in the Great War, what was called the Great War. But it evolved to become remembrance of all who had fallen in any war. So around, I think it was 1954, you guys changed that to May, to Memorial Day. And so we kept Remembrance Day as November 11th, which you guys now call Veterans Day. So that's where there's a kind of disconnect in how it's commemorated. So for you guys, it's now a day, because you have that separate Memorial Day, it's a day that you celebrate all people that have served in the military. Whereas for Europe and the Commonwealth, it's still a day that commemorates those that have fallen in battle in all wars. So it's quite the difference. Interesting thing is it all comes from America. Everything that we do has an American origin, and then you guys changed. So it's not like it's some ancient European tradition. So Woodrow Wilson started it, and then it got changed later. And it was, if you've been, and this, I'm working up to the BBC now, if you've been watching the BBC like I do, you will see the UK politicians and everyone on the BBC all wearing the red poppy flower, which comes from the Canadian poem, is it In Flanders Field? And I can't remember who wrote it. But that was a poem about how the poppy flowers grew out of the field where in France where huge battles had taken place and many lives were lost. And so the poppy actually became a symbol again by an American who made popular the idea that everyone wears these poppies on Armistice Day to commemorate and remember those that lost their lives in the Great War. We kept that tradition in the Commonwealth. For you guys, I think it's more assigned to Memorial Day now. But that's the reason we keep it in Australia. We also do another thing in Australia. So we keep the poppy, and we also have a sprig of rosemary that we wear on Anzac Day, which is something you guys won't know. And Anzac Day is in April, and it commemorates the Gallipoli campaign, which was, again, World War One, major defeat, and a lot of lives lost over months and months and months in Turkey, in Gallipoli. And it was a major defeat, but it was the first major campaign where Australia and New Zealand were new countries. Australia became a country in 1901. So we're still in the Commonwealth now, but we became a country in 1901. And that is an important day for us. And the rosemary is something that grows on the cliffs above Gallipoli, the cliffs that gave the Ottoman Empire the advantage over the Australians and New Zealanders that were sent ahead of the British soldiers to try and get through there so that they could open up the straits there to Russia and help in the war there. Major disaster. So a little bit of history there. I thought that was quite interesting how what I thought were real English Australian traditions actually had their origins in the US. The British Broadcasting Corporation. It used to be called the British Broadcasting Commission, I'm sure. But now it's called the British Broadcasting Corporation. If you don't know what the British Broadcasting Corporation is, it's like I don't know if it's like PBS. But anyway, it's government funded. And it's paid for, although they make their own money, like, PBS makes its own money. Actually, I found out something, that only 25% of PBS money came from the government. Anyway, I could have that wrong. So the BBC is having a lot of trouble right now with President Donald Trump in the US because, and this is where I hope I get this right, okay? You guys got to remember, I don't use a script. I'm not reading any of this. So let me see if I get this right. Around 2024, the BBC aired a program about about January 6th, about the riots at the Capitol, okay? And they took, it was over an hour of content of Trump's speech and reduced it to 12 minutes. And the way they edited it, it came out to say that it could be made to appear that the president was encouraging what resulted. And this is before the election, the last election. And so the claim that the president's making is that this program called Panorama showed him in a negative light so as to defame and influence the outcome of an election. That's what he's kind of claiming about the program. Oh, thank you for joining my club. And the lawsuit that he's filed is he wants an apology and he wants guarantees it won't happen again, and $1 billion. I feel like I should say it like this. He wants $1 billion. And this is huge news at the BBC in the UK right now, because that's pretty big. And there are lots of discussions about, the validity of all this. And here's my view. So my view is that the way the BBC edited Trump's speech from that day, January 6th, am I getting the date right? Is it was pretty bad. It was, in a sense, I don't blame them, considering that they had seen the outcome of that day, right? We all know what the outcome of that day was. And the way that they presented it seemed to show that he was responsible for what happened. My view is, well, it's not like he's totally not. And it hinges on this omission. It hinges on the omission that he did say during that hour that he was speaking, he did say peaceful. He did say to go there and peacefully demonstrate. So we have the BBC editing that shows Trump saying, you need to fight like hell, if you don't fight, you're going to lose your country, right? And we want to march up there, I'm going to go with you, and we're going to be there. And it sounds like he's saying, and we're going to go in there and we're going to take it over. But he's not, because they cut out the part where he said peaceful. Now, are the BBC wrong in cutting out? Were they wrong to cut out that statement? Most certainly. For fairness, most certainly in that editing, they should have put that crucial statement in there, that he did say that. But were they wrong? Right? Were they wrong? Like, what did happen that day? Even though he said that, guys, peaceful, in that hour-long speech where he got them to motivated to go there, was his statements that day enough that absolve him completely of responsibility? I would say no. I would say no. Was he completely responsible for that? I would also say no. He's not completely responsible for that. But they did leave out that, as journalists, they should have put that in there. As good television, their editing was good television. But it was wrong. So he wants $1 billion. So legally, where does that stand? Well, they have to prove, his lawyers have to prove that panorama program was seen in the US. This is what everyone is saying in the UK now. I don't know if they're saying this in the States, but they have to prove that panorama program was seen at length or by many in the US, and that it influenced people's opinion of Donald Trump at that time. And I think that's really going to be easy for them to say, nope. Nobody in the US watched that show. Pretty sure we can prove that. Unless I'm mistaken, and the BBC news program, Panorama, which I watch, is hugely popular in the US. Maybe it is. So that is my opinion. I don't know. then on the other side of that is, if they did watch that program, was that program enough to influence their view of that person, Donald Trump? Or did they already have a negative view of him? So is it the case that the program was sufficiently effective enough to change people's view of the man, Donald Trump? And again, I think that would be really difficult, especially considering what happened after those speeches anyway. So I doubt that he's going to get his $1 billion. I doubt he's going to win this lawsuit. I doubt it'll even go ahead. But I'm sure they're going to apologize. And a couple of people have already lost their jobs. I think the CEO quit and a few other people. But yeah, they are in a lot of trouble. They are getting a lot of grief from the opposition in the UK, who already don't like them. The other thing about it, and this was my perspective, right? So this is 100, what I've given you before, this is the facts that I've heard. Now, this is my perspective. One of the claims they're making about the BBC, apart from this, how damaging this $1 billion could be to the BBC, is that the BBC has institutional bias against Donald Trump, and that the BBC is intentionally trying to make him look bad all the time, and that all the people at the BBC are against him. And I thought about that, and I thought, that sounds like the UK. That sounds like all of the UK. So it sounds like the BBC is representative of the country, right? I've seen polls of Donald Trump's popularity in the UK. It's not good. It's like, I mean, I think the best poll I saw was that 30% of people thought he was okay. So, if the question is, are the majority of journalists and staff at the BBC opposed to Trump? There's no doubt. Statistically, if they're a cohort of the UK population, then yes, that's more than likely true. However, should they allow that to enter their reporting? Well, they should try to rein that in a bit and be fair and, try to be not biased in that situation. But if somebody says, are the BBC generally negative on Donald Trump, I'm going to say, yeah, because UK is generally. I'm not defending irresponsible. I just saw a comment. I'm not defending irresponsible journalism. I just said they should rein that in. But I think from my perspective is like, are you surprised? Like, is anyone surprised that the editing of an hour of Donald Trump's speech omitted the peaceful bit? Yeah, bad journalism. But, is there institutional bias against Donald Trump? For sure. I'm saying that's a guarantee. I'm confident on that. Should they be better? Most certainly. Should they try to cut their, not project that bias in their reporting? Of course. But are they themselves politically opposed to Donald Trump? Most likely. So anyway, I just thought I'd share with you the side that I'm seeing, and I don't know if you're seeing this in the US. But they are really scared. I mean, they are really scared that $1 billion, the way the opposition is framing it is because of the television licenses, which all citizens in the UK or households have to pay. to fund the BBC could go up if they were required to make a substantial payment. Sure, that could. I just can't see that happening. But yeah, it could happen. So the government, the opposition has a right to be upset with the BBC, but should anyone be surprised? No. Okay, let's have a look at some comments. Yes, they are supposed. Thank you, JC. They are supposed to keep things impartial. They are. I'm not saying what they did is right. I'm saying I'm not surprised. Right? Well, I mean, it's like, if you voted for Donald Trump and then you had, you voted for Donald Trump on the basis that tariffs were going to be brought in, and then you complained that prices went up. Be like, well, you knew what you were getting. And if you watch the BBC, you're not going to get pro-Trump stuff. Go back to Fox, right? And on that point, I think you'd be better off watching the BBC, because it's better to watch people critical of the person you love, so that you can just get a more balanced view and opinion yourself in your own mind. I mean, it's why my For You page is full of right-wingers, because I am looking at that stuff. I am watching it. I've read Ayn Rand, I've read Hayek, I've read Friedman. A couple of other people might be new here, so you'll catch on quick that I am I'm a capitalist, but I don't believe in I'm not an aspirational millionaire. I don't think that the wealthy are going to let us get wealthy. But I believe capitalism is not a system so much as it's a natural state. And that causes people to have issues with me, but I do. I just think it's the natural state of things is capitalism, and how we guide that capitalism is up to us. So that's why I say things like socialist leaders are good. They're just good for society and good for the economy. And Mamdani in New York is not going to be a huge thing. It's not going to. You're not going to see an exodus of millions of millionaires. Oh, here's a statistic for you. You guys might know this. 1 in 24 New Yorkers is a millionaire. That's insane. 1 in 24. That's so crazy. And so him being mayor is not going to drive people out. The rate, what is it that I read? The percent of millionaires of the US that used to be in New York is lower than it used to be. Right? So the per ratio amount of millionaires used to be more concentrated in New York, but less so now. But the number of millionaires is increasing in New York. And I heard one person try to explain that away by inflation. Like, whoa. It's like, no, the number has gone up so much more than inflation could account for. But nice try. People love that, though. I can't wait to be a millionaire by inflation. But the number of millionaires is increasing. And the number of millionaires leaving New York is increasing, and has been for the last 15, 20 years. So there's a statistic for you. It started to go up around the mid-2000s, and it's still, that uptick kept pace. So that uptick has maintained its energy right through to now. So could you possibly see an uptick? I don't know. Could you see it maintain? Most likely, because that's how it's been for the last 20 years. So that wouldn't be Mamdani's fault. That would just be that New York is always making and expelling millionaires. People move to New York, they make a lot of money, and they move out. Just happens. People get older, they want to go to different places where it's warmer and nicer. They go to Florida and Texas. That's just normal. So I don't think we're going to say that there's going to be a mass exodus from New York for 2%, for a 2% increase. A lot of people complaining about the police. This is one of my things that I like to latch onto. Defund the police. Terrible name. Wildly misunderstood from its original conception. The original conception of defund the police meant move some of the funding, not close them down, move some of the funding to other areas. And they did this in the UK. They established, you have police, ambulance, fire service, right? So now they have mental crisis teams that respond to clients that they know that are, when they say, when the police pick someone, they say, are you known to us? Well, it's like that. So once these people are known, perhaps to the police, then they get handed over to the mental health crisis teams, so that when that person does something, instead of police turning up at their door or responding to the situation, a crisis team responds, reducing the workload and strain on police, which is a great thing, and also, of course, resulting in better treatment and response to the person in the mental crisis, because they're responded to by people with sufficient training in that. The other great thing that they have in the UK now is, apart from ambulance, mobile, even, I don't know if they're doctors, but mobile, even on motorbikes, doctors and nurses and paramedics probably the best term, responding to accidents and events and health crises, rather than the police or the ambulance responding to them, which again is a progression. This is what defund the police meant. It never meant close down the police station, empty it, and let everyone run wild. It was never that. So I'm all for funding these things and reducing police funding. I think there's probably room for another layer of policing, something like that. Okay, let me have a look at a few comments. JC, I'll give you the cynical answer because you've already answered it yourself. Is the Japanese PM, is she mostly all talk and not much action? That is the description of a Japanese prime minister. All talk and no action. So, 70 years in, what is it now, like 80 years in the post-war era, one party has been in control, except for 3 occasions where the opposition, who are basically the same guys, won. And so there's no need for Japanese prime ministers to do anything. They just take turns at being prime minister. There are factions. So the parties in the 2 major parties, there's only 1 major party at the moment. They are made up of factions, and they take turns being prime minister. Right now, it's her turn, and her role is to appease the right-wing voters that have been bleeding into a new party that is emerging, a party that went from 1 seat out of the 300 and something to 15 in the last election. So still minor, but taking away from the ruling party's votes there. So her role is to get them back. Okay. $1 million most certainly is not what it used to be. Yeah. So I'm sure it was doctors that I saw, but the UK is they do well on that. They have also a community policing, which I don't know much about, but I know that that's another layer they have there. All right, so let's see. I talked about the BBC. I talked about New York. Oh, the only thing I didn't talk about was the tariff money. This is really interesting. So let's be honest. Where does this tariff money come from? Who is paying the tariffs? The administration likes to say that it's China, Canada, UK, wherever. The other side likes to say it's the consumer. You are paying the tariffs. Everyone's right. Because we have to remember a crucial thing about the costing of an imported product. A tariff only applies to not even the landed, I was going to say landed cost, but not even the landed cost of an item. It's part of the landed cost. The tariff only applies to the price that the importer pays in the home country. For example, if I pay $5 for a product in China and there's a 10% tariff, then I pay 50 cents, right? So now my $5 product cost me $5.50 because of the 10% tariff. I plan to sell that product for $20 in the US. So 50 cent increase is nothing. But I say to my manufacturer, I got to pay this tariff. It went from 3% to 10%. So I'm out. Is there some wiggle room for you? And the producer might say, yeah, I can drop it a few cents. I can drop it 10 cents. So now my product is $4.90. I pay a 49-cent tariff, right? And it works like that. So then you ship it and you get it to the States and you've got this product. It's cost you a little bit more. And your position now is, what's my margin? Do I still have a good margin? If I raise the price, will it mean that enough people will not buy it that I'll lose money? I won't get the sales I used to. So a lot of people will just leave it at that point. Places like Walmart, etc., where their margins are super tight, are going to have to pass that cost on to you. But this is where people crucially get really mixed up. That if something costs $20 in the US and there's a 10% tariff, it doesn't mean that $2 of that is the tariff. It depends on how much that was paid for originally in that country. So if that's a $5 product and you got it down a bit, there could only be 49 cents of that is tariff. So who's paying the tariff? The importer. Is the importer passing it on to you? As much as they can, they will. But are US citizens paying are consumers paying all the tariffs? No. Are US citizens, importers, and consumers paying all of the tariffs? Mostly. But it is costing the manufacturers in China and wherever. That is part of it. So when the government says to you, we're going to give you $2,000, that's nice. That's great. They're making a lot of money, not trillions, billions, not trillions. And if they want to give you $2,000 back, my calculations are that of that $2,000 over your average shopping year, probably about 500 of that is your own money, maybe more. If you want to add in gouging, which is a huge part of it, you could say that half of that $2,000 is actually your money that you paid because of the tariffs. So that's interesting, right? That the government gives you $2,000 back, 1,000 of it is yours already, and now they're giving you another 1,000 of somebody else's money. That sounds like a taxation system, right? Does it not? It sounds like you're being double taxed and then refunded your own money, and now you're supposed to praise the government for redistributing wealth. Yeah, that's how a tax system works. So the tariffs are a tax in that sense. Okay. Anglo-Sino consulting. I wonder how many people know what Sino means. I mean, people know what Anglo means, but I wonder what do many people know what Sino means? But thank you for the compliment, although there's only 15 people here, but thank you. I know you're being sincere. If people don't know, Anglo-Sino consulting is English Chinese. Yeah, so I've often said in here, my Chinese history professor was a world-renowned sinologist, that is, an expert on China. I actually forget the origins of that. I used to know that. That's interesting. I used to know that and I've forgotten. And Twinkle, I'm not going to let you say that in here because we don't do that here. I noticed you put that on a video of mine. I almost deleted it, but I didn't. So yeah, you're free to voice your opinion, but just don't say mean things. Okay? Landlocked Sailor. That's a good name. Oh, that reminded me of Hungary. Because they were just here, weren't they? Here. When I say here, I mean there. Yeah. Hungary was just there, visiting. I bet Trump likes him. What's his name? Forgot his name. Okay. So I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover today. That's amazing. I did it. Oh, I've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. Are you serious? Oh, crikey. Where's my timer? Oh, there it is. Yeah, I have. I've been going an hour and 20 minutes. Okay. I'm going to finish up. And that's my friend who wants to go to lunch, but I'm not going to go to lunch today because I don't feel well. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before I go? No, I'm not. And my quesadillas were delicious. They were pretty good. But no, I won't be making dinner. I won't be touching anyone's food today. You see me touch my nose then? See? That's why I won't be touching other people's food today. Take some Dayquil. Yeah. I'm taking something. But it worked. I already talked about New York, and I basically said no change. Yeah, so that's pretty much to reduce my view on Mamdani to a single statement. No change. You know, if anything, it'll get better. I don't think it'll get worse. You know, just briefly, whiskey's good. Just briefly, someone said, compared Khan, the mayor of London, to Mamdani. Okay, so both mayors of big cities, both Muslim. I don't know what the point of the comparison was, but perhaps both left-leaning as well. But they said that London now is the worst it's ever been. It's like, no, that was 20 years ago. That was the worst it's ever been. Is it bad now? Yes. Like every city, major city, has its problems. The police are trying to tackle, the latest thing, and they have their issues. But it wasn't created by the mayor, right? It's such a ridiculous. I can't believe I even have to say that. That London, 500 years of immigration or more. But let's not go back to the Roman Empire. 500 years of colonial immigration, and London's in trouble because of Khan, one mayor? Hardly. People are ridiculous. So, and this same person said that Khan cut the police force, and there are not enough police in London. Khan doesn't choose police numbers. That's the Home Office. He has some discretionary responsibility for budgets, but not for police numbers. He doesn't control that. That's the Home Office. So, as I said, also there's been restructuring in the UK where they have these crisis teams and so forth now, which makes, the policing numbers obviously a bit different, but nothing to do with the mayor. Mamdani, different. He does have that discretion to cut or increase the police force, but Khan doesn't. So, people say ridiculous things. Yeah. All right, guys. I can feel my voice starting to get a bit. Oh, thank you, Al. That was very kind of you. Thank you, Harold, because I know it's you, tapping on the screen and sending the likes out so that other people found us, new people like Al and JC and other people that were new. I hope you go ahead and follow, and don't believe the hype. When you hear me talking about some of the things I say, remember, I'm not radical. I'm far from it. I just, I really just look at the history and the economics of things. And that's it. It's not radical. Okay, I should go. I'm starting to vague out. And my coffee's finished. Thank you, Harold. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Deanna, for reminding me to go live. Thank you, Twinkle, for joining. Thank you, Ray. Ava. Good luck with everything, Ava, that you're doing in TikTok Shop. And Rie is probably gone, but thanks, Rie. You're always fun. And immigration is not natural. It's so natural. If you're still here, honestly, you have no idea how much it helps if you subscribe. I'll keep these coming.